Hello, I'm Joel Baird, the General Manager of Missoula Community Access Television, inviting you to learn more about Missoula City Council candidates this fall of 2023. To that end, Eric Melson is in the studio. He is running for a seat representing Ward 1. Eric, welcome. Thanks for taking the time.
Thanks so much for having me, Joel.
You know it. And as I explained to all the candidates, I'm asking the same question of all candidates, and I invited all candidates. And so far, not all candidates have responded, but we'll see. You know, there's still more time for interviews, and also before the primary, in September.
Mm-hmm.
So, here's your very first question asked of all candidates. What motivated you to seek this office?
Yeah, I think at its core, my motivation comes from a love of place. I wake up every day grateful, thankful, and feeling lucky that I get to call Missoula my home. This place has given me the life that I have. I mean, I met my wife here.
Yeah.
I started a career here. I started a business here. All of my immediate friends are here, and I feel like I've really benefited from this place and taken a lot from this place. And at my core, I feel like I want to give back. I also feel like local government and serving on city council is fascinating to me, and I'm just interested in learning and understanding how government can be a force for good in people's lives. And as our community grows and evolves and changes, we're looking down at some big challenges, and I want to play a very small role in charting the course and the vision and the plan for how we tackle those challenges and create our own destiny here in Missoula.
Great, thank you. And here's the second question asked of all candidates. If elected, what would your top 3 priorities be?
Sure, yeah. I feel like the 3 priorities that closely align with my professional and personal experiences are property tax reform, climate change, and open space preservation. So for property tax reform, we've known since the 70s, economists have been telling us since the 70s that our property tax trajectory has been unsustainable. We need to do something about this, or that threshold is going to be met. And I think that the threshold has been met this year when the reassessments came out.
What a shock, right? Everyone was freaking.
Massive shock, yeah. And there's a lot of uncertainty around what that means. Yeah. And there's a lot of people interested in figuring out why did we end up where we are, and where do we go from here? And I think that there's a lot of limitations for local government. We can't make those changes on our own. And if we're to be successful in broadening and diversifying the way that we generate revenue to supply those services that everyone depends on and relies on, we have to have the options to do that on our terms, and that means working in coalitions. I think the League of Cities and Towns is interested in figuring out a solution to property taxes. I think that the Missoula Association of Counties is already working on this. There's a great article today about Beaverhead County asking the Attorney General, Montana Attorney General Knudsen, to clarify his interpretation of the tax statutes. So I really see property tax as a linchpin to solve a lot of the revenue issues that we're seeing, having to raise taxes every year to pay for schools, to pay for these services as we continue to grow and expand. If we can get property tax right, and if we can shift that burden away from residential property owners more towards industry that should be paying their fair share, I think that we'll be able to diversify some of those revenues, take the pressure off of bonding and having to constantly put mill levies up to pay for things like this amazing library.
Yeah, right. Which was a bond too.
That's
that
right.
Passed, by a healthy margin. And we had talked with other candidates about, bond fatigue and all this stuff. And then it seemed like when the property tax reassessment came out, there was so much confusion. And we've run maybe 3 or 4 programs on our channel in which, let's say, Commissioner Josh Slotnick tried to explain what was going on, or it was a topic at City Club trying to explain what was going on. And the more people try to learn what's going on and how taxes are assessed and collected and spent, everybody's head just starts spinning, you know. But they know that their property taxes are shocking them, and then predictions for the future are really scaring them. People on fixed incomes are really worried about keeping their house, you know. So I think that's a great one, though I shouldn't kibitz. Your second priority.
Climate change. So this is the crisis of our generation, of the future generations, and if we don't do something about this today and every day moving forward, we are not going to have a habitable planet. We're already starting to see the effects of climate change in our backyard with several fires surrounding us this year. Luckily, we didn't have a bad smoke year. The winds have been in our favor, but that's something that we need to plan and prepare for. I mean, I think Missoula and western Montana, because we are water secure, we're going to start seeing immigration from the arid Southwest, from Southern California, from people looking for water security. And the city has done an incredible job in purchasing its water supply, and we still can improve on delivery in terms of sustainability and the infrastructure, fixing some of those leaking pipes and things, but that is a major step in resiliency in the face of a changing climate. We don't have a multinational company trying to bottle our water. We have water available for people in town. So the city has done a lot to put plans in action, very ambitious goals. The Climate and Conservation Plan, or the Conservation and Climate Action Plan, the 0 by 50. The mayor just put a new position in his budget for the electrification of Missoula and the city infrastructure that we rely on. I think cities are leading. I think local government is leading on climate, especially with such a divisive Congress that we're dealing with now. Like, we can actually make tangible gains from a local government perspective, and I think that Missoula is well positioned to take advantage of federal funding. The Biden administration is the most proactive in terms of financing local government's ability to pay for some infrastructure improvements to make gains on climate change. So I support all of the plans that the city has put in place. We need to adequately resource those plans and make sure that there's enough full-time staff to put those plans into motion. I think we need to aggressively be applying for grants. We are competitive in that space, but again, I think Missoula is well positioned to be a leader on climate, and I think we are in the state of Montana.
Yeah. Did you mention all three of your priorities in that?
The third one is open space preservation.
Yeah, that's it.
So my background is in kind of public land conservation, outdoor recreation policy, and we can't make more land. Like, it's a finite resource.
Right.
And the chemists era, the mayor chemists, had the vision and the foresight to look around at the hillsides, Dean Stone, the North Hills, waterworks.
And a new term like view shed.
Yeah.
The people are like, view shed, what does it mean?
Yeah, I mean,
now they know, I think.
He had the vision, and that administration had the foresight to protect the view shed and to protect the wildlife habitat, the carbon sequestration, the environmental services that open space provides, not to mention like environmental education. You know, we have summer programs where kids are going out into the woods and learning through the Watershed Education Network about riparian habitat and insects. And Parks and Rec does an amazing job getting kids out on bikes into their public lands, into the Rattlesnake and Patty Canyon. And outdoor recreation is one of the many benefits of having open space. There are, like I said, a lot of environmental services as well, but we have an opportunity to build on the legacy that Mayor Kemmis started by acquiring Marshall Mountain. That's something that I am very interested in working on. I think that that's a once-in-a-generation opportunity to protect more habitat, provide outdoor education, a space for people to go and play and recreate and learn about the environment. So yeah, outdoor open space preservation is a big one for me.
Oh, that's great. You're the first one to mention the Marshall, by the way.
Oh, that's great.
So this one was sort of predicated, you know, on the assumption that people were already door knocking, and some candidates have said, well, you're interviewing me so early, you know, they haven't gone yet. So you feel free to modify the third question asked of every candidate, what did you learn on the campaign trail?
Oh man, so much.
So you have been out and
Oh, yeah.
knocking in Ward 1.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I started knocking doors and dropping door tags in May.
Oh yeah, you were an early bird.
Yeah, I've dropped about almost 2,000 door tags,
Yeah.
and through that have talked with a bunch of residents in Ward 1.
Yeah.
I've held a number of meet and greet events. My goal was to host 3 a month,
Yeah.
and both in the north side and the Rattlesnake and the heart of Missoula and all the different areas of Ward 1.
Yeah, it's a wild ward, isn't it?
It is
I
a
mean, you
wild
could
ward.
address that if you want, but
Yeah.
you've got a dog from every village in
Yeah.
Ward 1.
I've never heard that, but yes. But yeah, I mean, I feel like I learned something every single day that I'm out meeting with residents.
Yeah.
And I've been meeting a lot with the community partners. Like I'm not fluent in local government. You know, I'm working really hard to learn as much as I can about my growth areas, like housing, for
Yeah.
example. Like my background is not in housing, and it's really complex. So I've done my best to reach out to community partners like Missoula Housing Authority, the Association of Realtors, North Missoula Community Development Corporation. I've met with county commissioners. I've tried to educate myself as much as I can on the areas I don't know as much as I would like to. I've read a ton of books about the affordable housing
Yeah.
and what other cities are doing to address growth intentionally. And so I've learned a ton through this process. I've learned that each of the various neighborhoods have different concerns. And like you mentioned, Ward 1 has a dog from every pack, or
Yeah,
whatever
right.
your analogy was.
So many different economic situations and
Yeah.
topographical situations.
Yeah.
And
And the Rattlesnake, what I hear from Upper Rattlesnake in particular, because that area is in the wildland-urban interface, wildlife conflict is a big one. What are we going to do about all these mountain lions? There are grizzly bears in my backyard. Is my garden safe from deer?
yeah, they eat all the flowers and people get very bitter. very
Sure.
quickly.
Yeah, I understand. I get it. I live in the Rattlesnake.
Right.
Some other concerns I hear about from the Rattlesnake neighborhood are wildfire preparedness.
Yeah.
There is one thoroughfare that goes up and down the Rattlesnake, which is Van Buren and Rattlesnake Ave.
Yeah.
So if there were a running crown fire, how are people going to get out on a small 2-lane road?
And when you hear stories like the tragedy of Maui and so on, it gets people thinking.
Absolutely. So that's, specific to the Rattlesnake. Lower Rattlesnake, I've heard a lot about speed limits. People go really fast up Duncan,
Yeah.
and that's scary. The train whistles are an issue for residents.
Train whistles
that
are a
live-
major issue.
Yeah.
Wednesdays with the mayor had a contingent of
Yeah.
folks early this spring, and they were saying it's been years now. And I know part of the problem is MRL sold to BN,
Yep.
and so
Yep.
all the agreements sort of went out the window
We
and
were
the
so close.
resettling, and they were so close to doing
So
something.
close. But there's new technology. So
Yeah.
anytime you have a federal railway like
Right.
that, there are obviously really strict,
Ground level crossing
Exactly.
right there.
there's a lot of really strict regulations about noise and things
Yeah.
like that to warn people that there is a train coming.
Because the tragedies behind ground level crossing could fill many a cemetery.
Unfortunately, that's true.
Yeah.
But there's new technology where we can aim those train whistles so that the noise is not as deafening for some of the
Yeah.
neighbors that live right next
Right
to
there.
the train.
Yeah.
So that's a big one, at least in the Lower Rattlesnake.
Oh,
and
sure.
some residents in kind of the heart of Missoula area. In the north side, it's a totally different set of priorities and issues. Infrastructure.
Yeah.
The bike ped bridge was closed for this entire year.
Entire year
Scott's-
leaving that underpass.
Yeah, the underpass is super sketchy. Yeah, and Scott Street is not bikeable or walkable friendly. I mean, it's
No.
straight up and straight back down.
Yeah.
The roads in the north side could use a refresh.
Sidewalks,
Yeah.
maybe.
There's a fun story actually. One of the first times I went out to deliver door tags, I put on rollerblades, thinking that it would be like more efficient
Right.
to move from door to door.
Yeah.
And in the first 10 minutes of rollerblading around the north side, one of the wheels rattled loose
I see.
because the roads are so bad.
Right.
And I just had to laugh and think like, wow, like we got to
There's
do
a
something about
challenge.
the north side. Yeah.
That'd be nice.
The sidewalks don't connect over there.
No.
there's an influx of new residents moving into the Bellagio area, and that area, because it's an urban renewal district, is a focal point for new development. But the infrastructure to move those people around hasn't been put in yet.
Yeah.
I know in the master plan, we're looking at connecting Russell to the interstate and having a
For
thoroughfare.
many a decade.
For many a decade. It's been a dream.
Yeah.
But that infrastructure is not in place, and we're putting residents into these high
Right there.
density areas.
Yeah.
Everyone agrees, I think, in most part, that building up and not out is a good strategy for growth until it happens next door or across
Right.
the street and you lose your view of the North Hills.
Yeah.
Uh,
The
and-
chemist view shed is like gone
Yeah.
from that.
So there are real concerns from the north side. And that's what the beauty of Ward 1 is like,
Yeah.
it's,
It's a challenge,
It's a
right?
challenge. There's a lot of different
Yeah.
opinions and a lot of different issues depending on the neighborhood and the people you talk to.
Yeah. Okay, the fourth and last question. What would you like potential viewers to know about you?
Well, let's see. I lived in Missoula for 15 years. I arrived here in 2008 after I finished a Bachelor's of Science in Natural Resource Management. I came to work for the Forest Service as a seasonal wilderness ranger in the Selway Bitterroot.
Oh, wow.
And I spent 7 seasons doing backcountry wilderness ranger work in Idaho and Montana. And I started working for nonprofits after that. I was a program director for a small nonprofit that did wilderness stewardship work, actually. I worked for a couple of national nonprofits in Washington, D.C., where I would organize and mobilize human-powered outdoor recreation advocates to permanently reauthorize and fund the Land and Water Conservation Fund, push back against the national monument, the effort to roll back protection on national monuments. And then I worked for Governor Bullock in a private-public partnership called the Montana State Parks and Focus Commission, where we took an entire year to study the log jams holding up our Montana State Park system. That led me to working as a lobbyist and a campaign consultant. So I ended up working on the 2020 ballot initiatives to regulate, tax, and legalize cannabis. I worked on that campaign because we saw that hunting, fishing, outdoor recreation, the outdoors in Montana are a winning issue in the ballot box.
Yeah.
And we designed that ballot language to fund outdoor recreation and conservation programs in the state of Montana that didn't have a dedicated source of funding. So I was very fortunate to work on that campaign. I actually registered and was a full-time lobbyist for the 2021 legislative session, which was the COVID session.
Oh, wow.
It was a really difficult time to be in the Capitol.
Yeah.
But I learned a ton about an entire session in Helena. And I have since worked on the Fairgrounds bond last year as a campaign consultant and the crisis services levy. Both of those unfortunately got voted down, and you mentioned bond fatigue.
Yeah, we have been
those
talking about it.
Those are great examples. You know, that threshold has been met.
Yeah.
And I think we're starting to see some of the effects of those things not being funded, particularly the crisis services levy. Since then, I've been working for a nonprofit called Public Land Solutions, and I work with Western rural communities that are interested in diversifying their economic opportunities and moving away from resource dependency. So a lot of these communities are like coal, natural gas, timber, that no longer have that opportunity. They've had a rupture in their economy, and they're looking at outdoor recreation as a means of economic development. So they want to take advantage and optimize and enhance the public lands that are right next to them for economic purposes. They want
Sure.
to compete with Colorado and to some degree
The tourism
Montana.
piece, right?
Yeah, and that's, I think, slowly how Montana is evolving. You know,
Yeah.
this is getting back to property taxes, but we're no longer dependent on industry to fund our property taxes. We're now reliant on residential.
Yeah, homeowners
Homeowners.
and landlords that pass it along
Yeah.
to the hapless renters.
And we're not taking advantage of and benefiting from the 3.5 million tourists that come here
Yeah.
every single year.
It's a theme we have heard
Yeah.
during this first day of interviews.
Yeah.
Well, Eric, thanks so much. Is there anything you want to add?
My
you
mic
may-
fell off.
could put it back on.
I'm surprised that fell off. Sorry. I don't know if that is a problem, but
Scott says we're good.
did
We
it capture all of that?
Yeah.
I could hear you.
Only near the end did the mic fall off.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, like the last couple of, I don't know if you wanted to reiterate, was just when you were talking about those communities recognizing that resource extraction economies weren't working for them, and that you were consulting with them to find opportunities for outdoor activities for tourism.
That's
and
exactly
then it
right.
fell off. I mean, just around that time.
Yeah,
You
no,
said
that's,
that.
I mean, that's exactly right. I think there are communities that want outdoor recreation as a part of their economic outlook, and there are other communities that think outdoor recreation is a form of gentrification.
Yeah,
and
there's that.
that's fair both way, you know, and it's not my job as a consultant to bring a preconceived idea of what your community should be.
Yeah.
It's the community vision that recognizes the potential for outdoor recreation as an economic driver, but they need the technical assistance to figure out how to do that. How do they construct a built environment to benefit from and attract recreationists?
Yeah, sure. Well, thanks so much for taking the time
Yeah,
to be
Joel,
here. I
for
hope
sure.
it was a satisfying experience. Well, thank you, dear viewer, for taking in this visit with Eric Melson. He is running for a representative seat on Ward 1 for the Missoula City Council this fall of 2023. If you're interested in seeing more candidates, we have extended this invitation to everyone running for council, and we will place them all on social media in addition to MCAT's Cablecast channel 190. For MCAT, I'm Joel Baird. Thanks for watching.